So I would say that something that makes it a tale of our time is obviously it reflects the times, first of all. So it could be what's going on socially. It could reflect like the way a group of people thinks. And then also in terms of like the actual story writing, I would say it's also defining a genre for the next generation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tales of Our Time. This is a show where we discuss the stories that move us, what makes them so meaningful, and why others should or could find meaning in them as well. I'm your host, Amanda Stevens, and in this show, we tackle movies, books, comics, and more. Wherever there's a story, there is a reason to read. And in today's episode, I guess that would be watch. I should warn you first, this is not a spoiler-free podcast or show, so bear that in mind as you listen. Today, I'm joined by my guest, Chris Carnahan.
Hello.
How are you, Chris?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Great.
Chris is one of my oldest friends in Taiwan. He also produces a show for Radio Taiwan, right?
I do, yeah. One news and then one like kind of like dystopian future kind of a show.
What?
Yeah, it's about technology that's like going to kill us all.
Oh, well, so if you want to learn about that, you can head over to Chris's shows, Uplifting News,
yes,
or
Technically Possible.
The opposite, almost.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it with, glee, but.
Yeah, it's interesting to study the ways in which technology improves. But that's not what we're talking about today. What show, because it's not a book, it's not a movie, it's not even a comic. What show have you brought for us today?
No, brace yourself for this. This is Beetlejuice, the musical.
Directed by Alex Timbers.
Yeah, the original Broadway production was.
Yeah, and that's the one we're going to be talking about today. With musicals, it might depend on which viewing or like which performance you see. So specifically, we're talking about the original Broadway performance today, the one that was directed by Alex Timbers. Mm-hmm. If you were lucky enough to see it by yourself, it's a little hard to get a hold of.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So would you like to give us, I think a lot of people actually are not very familiar with this one. Rather like maybe familiar with the trappings of Beetlejuice.
All right.
But not the story and certainly not the musical.
Sure.
Could you give us a short summary for those of us who haven't, like me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think we're going like pretty niche here because first, like it's a musical. And I know like not everybody has access or is like into musicals, but also it's Beetlejuice, which is kind of like a cult hit in the first place back in 1988, I believe. Mm-hmm. And the movie by Tim Burton was great. It was fantastic, but it was kind of just like kind of dark comedy, fun kind of thing throughout, and there wasn't really a moral or anything. So yeah, from being just like kind of like a random show to the musical part, I really like what they did with it was amazing, because what they did basically is they focused more on the character of Lydia, and they actually gave her a reason to be kind of in her rebellious stage. Ooh. It literally opens with like a ballad about her mom being dead. They're at the funeral.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
And so this is kind of why they show her rebelling. And the second opening number, I guess the actual opening by Beetlejuice himself, kind of goes into like talking to the audience directly. It's a super meta musical. Mm-hmm. And he's saying that this is a show about death. And that's kind of what it is. So what it goes throughout is like it's her trying to connect actually back with her mom. And then trying to get into the netherworld later on. Kind of follows the same beats. And anyway, so like basically she meets the two ghosts that live in the house. Beetlejuice is trying to get them to get her to say his name because he's a demon and he wants to like manifest.
Okay. Do they know that he's evil?
Right after they meet him, yeah, basically.
He
tries to help him and then they're just like, I hate you guys. And then, I mean, it is a comedy.
Yeah.
And then, but she meets them and they kind of become like her, like kind of her parents in a way, like
her ghost
substitute parents. Yeah, helping her out. Not so much in the musical, but
yeah.
But then she kind of gets a hold of some information about going to the netherworld to see her mom, and like,
oh my God,
spoiler, she manages to do it, kind of, but she doesn't meet her mom. In fact, her dad runs in to save her at the end. That's kind of the end, and then they defeat Beetlejuice and his mom, which is a new thing too, and basically they say it's a show about death, but I really like what they did with it. It's not super like duper deep or touching.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what a lot of critics gave it flack for. But like, if you actually look beyond that, it is a show about moving on from every single character in it.
So
I don't know if they did that deliberately, but that's how it worked out. And it's actually really good.
I mean, so when I was going through school, one of my professors said something that I feel is really accurate, where he said, you make the meaning in what you read or what you watch. So it doesn't actually matter like what the author or the people who made that media intended. It does matter to some extent, right? But that doesn't mean that you can't find a meaning that was like there.
Yeah, so this is the thing about this musical is like we kind of have to talk about the story about how the musical came to be.
Yeah.
Because that's actually even just as fascinating as the actual musical. Like, it did have a rough start getting to Broadway.
Oh.
And like the first shows were just like completely overboard. This is something the director and kind of had, or maybe the writers had a problem with in their previous shows as well. Is like, it was a little bit too crude.
Okay.
Yeah, so they had to cut back, and like there's all these stories about it. But I mean, okay, that's general stuff. But then like the critics absolutely hated it. They hated the music, they hated the scenery, they hated the way it moved and the lights and everything. But for me, like, this is the coolest part about the show is like they didn't try to do this, but it became a show that really is about bringing younger people to musical stage, like shows.
So it's very non-traditional then?
That's the thing is like, I don't understand where like maybe like critics, like they just get something in their head or something offends them. Who knows?
Yeah.
But like, I can see why they don't think it's the best, but it's like, actually it's good. But it's different.
Do you have an example? Because I'm really interested in this, and I want to like visualize, like, what was something that stuck out to you when you were watching it that you thought that was really cool?
Yeah. So one thing that I guess that the critics hated was the music itself. They made it sound like they thought that it was like everybody was like too loud or it was just constant or whatever. But actually, like, I don't really like all the songs, but the songs that I do like, I think are really good, and they match the characters well and the story really well. And they're newer sounding. They're not like typical musical fashion, which I actually don't like so much.
Not like the classic kind of musicals.
Yeah, like la di da di da,
like,
or whatever.
Singing in the Rain.
Sure, I mean they're good, but yeah, we're in the 2020s. Come on.
I mean, it's more, maybe it's like just because that was the classic style doesn't mean that we can't reinvent a new one.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Hamilton, which was 100%, at least in my experience, I'm not a critic of these things. I don't know how to study it, but I thought it was very different, like 100% different from the previous musicals I'd seen.
Yeah, and it got a lot of praise.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's kind of like, like also, it's the industry, and like Hamilton's great, by the way. I'm not saying it's not.
No shade to Hamilton.
But it might be like a little bit of virtue signaling or something like that.
Yeah, well, and also like the topic is totally different too, right? Because Beetlejuice itself, like you said, was like a cult classic, right? And a lot of those things, I think, are not highly regarded by, I don't know the right way to say that. They're not highly regarded by like the art community. Yeah. I guess like the fine art community. That's and true. Musicals, I think, kind of walk that line. I think many people associate plays with a type of fine art, and musicals kind of come in and out of that. And then if you make a cult classic into kind of like a cult musical, then I think you're inviting criticism. I don't think it should be that way, but I think that that's the way how that happened.
That's probably true. Yeah, for sure. But then I think about like my actual favorite musical, which is The Book of Mormon, and like it's very crude as well. Yeah, and completely.
And also got a lot of attention.
Yeah, and people loved it. It's like constantly rated at the top. So I don't know, whatever. Maybe. But they also like really cool things is they use like the 3D light projection in the show to change the environment instead of just actually changing the environment.
Oh, cool.
But also the environment itself was like they kind of described it in the behind the scenes, but it's kind of like a character itself. Like the house moves, and there's this one part when Lydia, like the main girl, she's singing like her song about her dead mother, and like when she's at the end belting out that last note, like the house like draws back in the distance from the stage and like makes her look bigger, and it's just God, so good.
That's so interesting to make the setting like the props themselves characters. Yeah, I think that's so cool. Basically they're like projecting the setting in on top of set pieces that are already there.
So they have like the built set pieces that look like Tim Burton style, which is already amazing for me. But like there's this one part. So for example, like after they do this like a possession thing in the movie and in the musical, it's like the Deo, mi se Deo. This part, like after that, her parents, all the people, they all run out of the house, or they're kicked out of the house by Beetlejuice. And then like
Yeah.
Beetlejuice like turns around and is like, now it's our house. And like the 3D projection takes over the decor or whatever, that's it like projects onto the house, making it his colors, the black and white.
Oh my God.
And it just looks so cool because it grows on the house as it does. And it's really cool.
That's so cool. That's so like ingenious.
It is. It is.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of what leads to what I'm talking about, is like, yeah, even if it's not the best, like there's no reason for the hate except that it's new. And that's kind of like how this musical became also so popular, because it is actually the most played musical soundtrack on all streaming sites.
Wow, really?
It is. Yeah.
Oh
At
my
the
God.
time, I think when it closed, which was this year, January, because it reopened, which is something crazy
Yeah.
to happen. It had like over 350 million plays total.
What?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So maybe despite what all we've been saying, like perhaps the better word would have been like trailblazing.
Yeah.
If other people follow in its steps, I guess.
Yeah, it is trailblazing. But I guess for a younger audience, because the reason it came back, the reason it gained so much popularity is, first, they dropped the prices from like, $200, $300
Yeah.
to $69,
Yeah.
because they're targeting the TikTok audience. Whereas,
Yeah, the younger generation.
but they literally like made their following on TikTok. So when the lead actress
Yeah.
kind of left during like the troubles, the backup, what are they called? The understudy, she was like a TikTok star already. And like she started posting about it, and like it blew up. Like
Oh,
that's
so
how the songs
cool.
got so popular, is that people TikToked to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, why not? Like, that's a really good way to get engagement. However you may feel about like social media or TikTok.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think you can't deny like the power that it holds to get people's attention.
Yeah.
And to keep something in a discussion.
And yeah, there's always that like that worry about new technologies and social media and stuff. But like, I mean, it's
Technically
here.
possible.
This is what, yeah, exactly. this is what people are doing now, kids or whatever. Not even kids, like, people that are just 20, 30 years old now too. Usually a musical's demographic is like 50% of its audience is over 54 or something of like
Yeah.
that, which is crazy. This
we said
one,
it's like a classic.
70% of the audience was ages 18 to 54. Is the first time ever. So that's why I love this musical, is it's bringing in new interest, new people, like for a next generation.
My second to last question was going to be like, what do you think makes this like a tale of our time? But do you think that's it? That it's like introducing a new storytelling form to a younger generation and making it something that they like or that they can vibe with?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's pretty much it. Like the tale itself is nothing like groundbreaking.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's funky. But it's not the story so much as it is like what the show has done
Right.
for the medium.
Exactly. And I guess they did make the show, not on purpose, but they did make the show like extremely memeable, which is something that, people over 54 won't even understand. So
Right. It's definitely like a young a young generation.
yeah. And it's just, but the show itself, like in general, like it is well made. It's well done. There's some parts that I'm just like, okay, they could have done better. And some of the music isn't like super big hit, but like you can tell the actors are having so much fun with it.
I actually, that's one of my favorite things whenever you go to go see a show or a movie. I hear that comment a lot, but like when you can tell the actors like had a blast doing what they were doing, and that I think that brings a lot of joy to the performance itself. So the last thing that I want to ask you is if you could give this show a snappy tagline. I'm sure it already has one, but you invented one yourself. What would that be?
Yeah. So like they said, it's a show about death. And I agree, but I think I don't want to make it longer, but what it is kind of like a death of your like fears, like the things that are holding you back. So I could somehow make that into that. But also there's like a line from the first opening number from Beetlejuice where he says he's a professional or something like that of tearing convention apart.
Oh,
And I think that's a pretty good one.
wow. It's prophetic almost.
Yeah.
That's so good. I got goosebumps. It's so exciting. So thank you so much, everyone, for listening through this one. We have been discussing Beetlejuice, the musical by Alex Timbers. Music by Eddie Perfect. Definitely go check it out. I guess before we close, what song would you most recommend people listen to?
Anything by Beetlejuice, actually. Anything that he's in is just amazing.
Anything that like he's the lead singer.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you everyone for listening. This has been Tales of Our Time on Radio Taiwan, where we discussed Beetlejuice, the musical, tearing conventions apart, a tale of our time. We'll see you next time. Bye.